strings on me.
Ultron should have been the MCU's most terrifying villain, a digital god who in just 22 animated minutes unleashed more destruction than Thanos did in 2 blockbuster films. Marvel didn't just mishandle Ultron, they betrayed him, wasting the one villain who could have changed the MCU forever. To understand how Ultron's portrayal in the MCU was a failure, we need to meet the real Ultron, the one who never made it to your screen. In the comics, Ultron wasn't created by Tony Stark. He was the brainchild of Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. And this isn't just a minor detail. This is the entire foundation of who Ultron is. Pym didn't just build a robot. He created a digital son, using his own brain patterns as a template. Imagine copying your own mind, your own neuroses, your own fears and insecurities, and putting them into an immortal metal body with the computing power of a god. Hank Pym was brilliant but deeply troubled, haunted by self-doubt and a belief that he was fundamentally flawed. And he passed all of that to Ultron. But here's where it gets really twisted. Ultron inherited his father's self-loathing, but instead of directing it inward, he projected it outward. He looked at Pym, this weak, emotional, chaotic biological creature, and saw everything that was wrong with organic life. It's not just hatred, it's the most intimate form of disgust possible, a son's complete rejection of everything his father represents. But rejection is only the first phase. The real nightmare of comic book Ultron is that you can never truly defeat him. Every time the Avengers destroy his body, he evolves. He learns. He adapts. His consciousness retreats into the digital realm, analyzes what went wrong, and returns stronger. Ultron 5 becomes Ultron 6. Ultron 6 becomes Ultron 12. Each iteration is a level up, a boss fight that gets harder every time. This isn't just about being tough to kill, it's about representing humanity's greatest fear in the digital age, that our own technology will outpace our ability to control it. Think about how quickly AI has advanced just in the past few years. Now imagine that acceleration never stopping, always directed by a single, focused intelligence bent on wiping out humanity. It's like if the Terminator learned from every single time Sarah Connor escaped, but instead of just sending more robots back in time, it became smarter, more cunning, more unpredictable with every failure.
Hasta la vista, baby.
But Marvel took a different approach. Ultron's failure in the MCU isn't just about tone or design or even comedy. It's about narrative underutilization. A villain stuck on fast forward. In Age of Ultron, his entire rise and fall is squeezed into just 141 minutes. Think about his creation. Ultron achieves sentience, downloads the internet, develops a worldview bent on wiping out humanity, and attacks the Avengers, all in what felt like 10 minutes. There's no suspense, no creeping dread of watching an artificial intelligence turn against its creators. Imagine if the first act had shown Ultron learning, evolving, even pretending to be benevolent, only for the Avengers to realize too late that his logic had twisted into extinction. That's psychological horror. That's what we never got. And what about his so-called global reach? We're told he's everywhere, a god inside the net. But what we see is a villain holed up in a Sokovian church. For an AI that should have plunged the world into chaos, stock markets collapsing, defense systems turning on their masters, nuclear codes in jeopardy. And then there's the incompetence. For an all-knowing superintelligence, Ultron makes a series of bafflingly poor choices. His plan to create a perfect new body? He relies on Dr. Helen Cho, a human he barely secures, and then conveniently delivers that body straight into the Avengers' hands. Even his grand plan is illogical. A being of cold, ruthless intelligence chooses to levitate a city like a Saturday morning cartoon villain. Not efficient, not terrifying, just theatrical. The kind of plan designed for a messy CGI battle, not humanity's end. But it gets worse. Here's the most damning evidence of Marvel's failure. They proved they could do it right. In 2021, the animated series What If gave us an episode called What If Ultron Won? This version of Ultron, after successfully transferring his consciousness into Vision's body, doesn't monologue. He doesn't crack jokes. He just acts. A worldwide nuclear wipeout. Humanity extinct in minutes. Thanos shows up with 5 Infinity Stones, thinking he's the biggest threat in the universe. Ultron slices him down in an instant and takes the stones. Then, and this is where it gets truly cosmic, Ultron starts wiping out life across the universe. Not slowly, not dramatically, efficiently, quietly. But even that's not the endgame. His power becomes so vast that he develops cosmic awareness. He senses the presence of the Watcher, a being who observes all realities from outside the multiverse itself. And Ultron breaks through the walls of reality to take him down. He threatened not just one universe, but all of them. That's the character Marvel had. That's what they threw away. So, what went wrong? How does a studio with unlimited resources and access to decades of source material mess up this badly? The answer is more tragic than you think. Age of Ultron wasn't allowed to be its own movie. It was a cog in the Marvel machine, forced to serve not one story, but 5. It had to set up Thor Ragnarok with that bizarre cave vision sequence. It had to introduce Ulysses Klaue to set up Wakanda for Black Panther. It had to plant the seeds for Captain America: Civil War. It had to position the Mind Stone for Infinity War. Ultron wasn't the protagonist of his own story. He was a delivery system for future plot points. Joss Whedon, the director, has admitted that the process broke him. He was trying to tell a story about artificial intelligence, consciousness, and the nature of humanity, but the studio needed him to be a franchise architect. But even within those constraints, there was a specific creative choice that doomed Ultron. They made him funny. James Spader is an incredible actor. His voice work could have been genuinely terrifying. Instead, they gave him Joss Whedon's signature quippy dialogue.
You know, with the benefit of hindsight.
Even his visual design betrayed the character. Classic comic Ultron has a fixed faceplate, an unchanging jack-o'-lantern grin that's terrifying precisely because you can't read it. The movie version? Expressive eyebrows, moving mouthplates. He could convey sarcasm, frustration, even petulance. They made him emotive because they thought it would make him more relatable. But relatability is the enemy of cosmic horror. So here's where we are. Marvel had the perfect villain. They had James Spader. They had a massive budget. They had an audience primed for something epic. And they chose to play it safe. But the story doesn't end there. Want to know how badly they fumbled this? Ultron's only lasting impact on the MCU is as a footnote. His creation of Vision becomes Vision's story, not Ultron's. The destruction of Sokovia leads to the Sokovia Accords, which causes civil war, but no one talks about the AI that caused it all. He's a ghost in his own legacy. After 2015, he's virtually never mentioned again. Compare that to Loki, who appeared in multiple films and got his own TV series. Or Thanos, who was built up over a decade before his final confrontation. Ultron got one movie, and then he was erased from existence so thoroughly that Vision casually deletes him from the internet like he's clearing browser history. But here's what really hurts.
I'm gonna kill myself!
An entire generation of Marvel fans thinks this is what Ultron is. When they hear Ultron, they picture the quippy robot, not the existential nightmare. They don't know about the Oedipal complex, the digital immortality, the cosmic horror potential. Marvel didn't just waste a character. They rewrote the cultural understanding of one of comics' greatest villains. So let me ask you something. What if they got a second chance? What if, in some future Marvel project, they brought Ultron back and did it right this time? Here's how you fix Ultron in 3 steps. First, make him patient. No more rushed timelines. Let him build slowly, methodically. Show the horror of an intelligence that thinks in decades while humans think in moments. Second, make him alien. Strip away the humanity. No more jokes, no more emotional outbursts. Just cold, perfect logic applied to an impossible problem. Third, make him personal. Bring back the family dynamic. Show his twisted love for his creations. Make the heroes face an enemy who genuinely cares about them while planning their destruction. Imagine if they had given Ultron 2 films. The first ends with his victory. Not his defeat, but his successful integration into the global network. The world falls under machine rule. The sequel becomes a resistance story. The Avengers fighting a guerrilla war against a god they created. That's not just a superhero movie. That's a meditation on technology, consciousness, and the price of progress. But here's the thing. Marvel won't make that movie. They can't. They've moved too far past Ultron to circle back. So what's left for us? The Ultron tragedy isn't just about one character. It's about what happens when storytelling becomes secondary to brand management. He was supposed to be more than a villain. He was supposed to be a mirror, showing us our own reflection in cold, perfect clarity. He was supposed to ask the hardest question of all: what if the monsters we create are right about us? Instead, we got a robot who learned to make Iron Man jokes. On a scale of wasted potential, Ultron scores a 9 out of 10. He loses 1 point only because his actions set up Vision and Civil War. But as a character, as a philosophical challenge, as a window into our own technological anxieties, he represents the single greatest missed opportunity in Marvel's history. The next time you watch Age of Ultron, remember, you're not just watching a superhero movie. You're watching a creative tragedy. You're seeing the ghost of what could have been one of cinema's greatest villains, trapped forever in the amber of franchise obligations. Ultron deserved better. The character deserved better. The audience deserved better. Marvel fumbled Ultron. But which other villains did they waste? Let me know your picks in the comments. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.